Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Destination Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Stoker. We've got another fun show for you today. A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to have a good friend of mine, Thomas Sally, on, and he talked a little bit about some of the recovery that's been going on after Hurricane Helene hit North Carolina. And since then, I actually had someone else from North Carolina reach out. His name is Spencer Bost, and he's the executive director of Downtown Spruce Pine. And I had the opportunity to learn a little bit more about what some of that recovery looks like. Thomas wasn't directly in the line of fire there, even though he's done a lot to help out with recovery. Spencer's been kind of in the thick of it, so I thought it would be a really interesting conversation to have Spencer join us today. So, Spencer, thank you for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. It's good to have you. And again, I appreciate you reaching out. I'd love to start the conversation the way I do with a lot of the guests that come on the show. And that's asking you a couple of questions to get to know you. So the first question we like to ask is, what is your dream destination? So, Spencer, if you could go anywhere in the world other than Spruce Pine, where would it be?
Yeah, so well, I know it's an answer that's been given before, but I really want to go to Scotland, specifically like the Highlands of Scotland. One just because if you know historical geography, you know that Scotland and here have very similar topography. That the mountain range that's here in Appalachia is the same that's over there. So I'd be curious to see kind of the comparisons there. Also, just how strong the culture is here of like the Scott Irish culture in Appalachia. I'd love to experience it over there. And then more personally, I've been doing genealogy for my family for a long time. And my mom's family, my mom's maiden name was Scott, and I was able to trace it all the way back to Scotland. I'd love to go see, where my family is from in Aberdeenshire. So,
Nice. I hear a lot of genealogical interest in travel, and I think that's kind of a fascinating category of travel that even though all of us kind of think about it in the back of our minds, I don't know that we've optimized our destinations for it. And so I think this category is something that I'm keeping an eye on that I think may emerge as an important category of travel over the next several years.
oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we all want to be, in touch with, who we are, where we're from.
Yeah. A lot of those genealogy companies are actually based here in Utah. Which one did you do yours through?
So I've been actually just going old school and pulling files for mine. I used a little bit
Nice.
of ancestry.com. There's myfamilysearch.com, which is a good one too. That's run by a
Yeah.
church in Utah.
Yep.
And also I found newspapers.com was really cool too to try to find like if I couldn't find an old family member, I could pull an obituary from late 1800s and find out a parent's name or something. So I would kind of old
Nice.
school, but with some new help for sure.
Yeah, I like it. That's dedication, right? To go pull files and everything on
Oh
your
yeah,
own. Ancestry is based here in Utah, and then also the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which I'm actually a member of, is based here in Utah, and really has a lot of really interesting
oh
resources
yeah.
for people to be able to find kind of their history and anyway, it's fun to hear people working on that. And I like I said, I think that's a category of travel that's a little bit untapped.
Yeah, it's fun. It's something to do. I love. The more life goes on, the more I realize the name of the game is something to do.
That's right. That's right. Something to focus on and
There you go.
prioritize, right? Well, Spencer, tell me, how about a favorite travel memory that you have? Something that you remember that kind of sticks out to you, and you kind of try to recreate that when you're doing travel now.
Yeah, one of my favorites is when I was a kid growing up in Southern Ohio, we used to take the 13-hour drive to Hilton Head, South Carolina. It's something it kind of built into me a love for road trips. I don't really care for air travel, so anywhere that I'm going, whether it's with my fiance or friends or anything, we're driving. And a 13-hour drive is nothing because I was doing it when I was a kid, and I really enjoy it. My parents took time to like try to see what was local about a spot. We weren't real big tourist trap people. We wanted to, my dad was the guy who was like bugging people at the grocery store about, hey, where do y'all go to dinner? And so trying to like capture that and like an authentic experience, anywhere we go. My fiance and I love to take day trips to go. And one, I kind of scout out other downtowns to find out if they're doing something cool that I could steal. But also just, trying to find, what's real and what's cool about a spot and try to find out about its culture. I was fortunate that I've lived in a bunch of different spots. So it's cool to, live somewhere and kind of try to become a part of something, try to, understand the culture and the people of where you're at.
I like it. So Hilton Head, it's a place my wife and I have gone several times on vacation and really enjoyed it. I didn't realize it's funny because North Carolina and South Carolina very close to each other,
Yeah.
but you're kind of in the top western corner of North
Oh yeah.
Carolina. Is that correct?
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah. The
then Hilton
northwestern
Head is
corner.
in the bottom eastern corner, right? So that
Yep.
13 hours doesn't sound realistic when you say it, but it's just it's deceiving on a map, isn't it?
Oh yeah. That was from Southern Ohio where I grew up. Was the 13 hours? It's much
Okay.
easier now. Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say, man, that 13 hours sounds crazy. Okay, that sounds much more realistic.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
sitting here trying
Ohio
to
to
figure
South
out in my head
Carolina.
how in the world. Okay, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, how did that take 13 hours? But I guess it's not as deceiving as I thought. It's from Ohio.
Yeah. 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 Or just a lot of bathroom breaks.
Nice. Well, I appreciate you answering some of those questions. Would love to have you just give us the overview. Well, actually, I'd actually like to start with your background and maybe how you ended up in Spruce Pine, and then I'd love to learn more about the community.
Yeah, absolutely. So before I was doing this, I was actually a park ranger. I make the joke that I inherited it. My grandfather's also a park ranger, so it was going to the parks when I was a kid. Is where I learned how to fly fish. Many of my memories, was like camping with my dad or like hiking with my grandpa. I've actually got a tattoo of the first, plant that my grandpa taught me to ID. It was like kind of my start of getting into all that. And
Oh,
so
cool.
when I went to college, I studied Parks and Recreation Management at Appalachian State. And, the goal was, park ranger. That's what I'm doing. So got started there, got advised to, apply for, a job on the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is right in the back door of, right in the backyard of App State. And so I applied. I was like, oh, I'll get rejected from the job, but I'll have like a hiring manager's email address. And then, I could like build my time here. But I was fortunate enough that I got hired somehow. And so my first job as a park ranger was actually, I got stationed an hour south of Boone in Spruce Pine, North Carolina, where I am now, and lived here and worked here on the Blue Ridge Parkway for 2 summers. After that, I went to the Outer Banks and worked 2 summers over there at Jockey's Ridge State Park and Nag's Head in the Outer Banks. And after that, got done with school. It was peak COVID. Was trying to find a job. Not too many park ranger jobs around, so I ended up getting involved in kind of environmental education with a nonprofit in Eastern North Carolina. And I was in a little town in Bertie County, North Carolina, in Windsor. Little teeny tiny little town, but beautiful area. If you like kayaking, it's beautiful over there. And it's, remote and you're not going to get bothered by anybody. It's very nice. And when I was working there, the town had started up sort of a tourism marketing initiative. And I was fortunate that they chose me as their, contractor to help out with that. So I got involved with tourism and marketing there in Eastern North Carolina. And when I was talking with my fiance about, where do we want to live, what do we want to do? We had been taking a lot of trips back up here to the mountains, specifically to Spruce Pine, because I always loved it. I love coming back up here, especially during leaf season. She was like, oh, well, see if you can find a job, somewhere over there. And sure enough, I hopped online and found my job available and I applied for it. And now I'm the downtown director in Spruce Pine and living here again. And it's the dream. It's the dream.
No way. That's awesome. You mentioned the time during COVID. During COVID, there was a lot of interesting storytelling that happened, and it created some mystique around the Appalachian Mountains. And so I've got to ask, wildest experience as a park ranger, what was it?
Oh, there's any number of ones. There's, the people ones where people just don't know how to behave. I was a search and rescue incident commander for a little bit on the parkway, and we had some crazy experiences where people would, come up and kind of underestimate nature. You are used to it, where it's familiar, and you go to new areas and you try to kind of infer on, whatever. But people would love to go off trail and get themselves really lost. We had one where we had like 3 agencies looking for a guy, and turns out he was just, he had stumbled down the river and found himself to a parking lot, and we were in there looking for him, and he was like chilling in a parking lot. So that one's always fun. There's always there's the animal ones too. I think every park ranger has like an animal that's like out to get them. I had one coworker that was skunks anywhere he went. If he saw a skunk, he knew he was just gonna have a bad day, that it was gonna mess with him. For some
Oh
reason,
no.
mine was turkeys. Anytime I saw a turkey, I knew we were going to get in like an altercation for some reason. There was one specific trail on the parkway that there was an old Tom turkey, just been there for Lord knows how many years, and he just did not like me. So I got in like 2 personal fights with that turkey. Well, so it's just
What does a
weird
fight with a
stuff like
turkey
that.
look like,
It
Spencer?
ain't pretty. It's kind of embarrassing. It's certainly humbling. But turns out they can jump really high. So It'll clear your head if you give them the chance. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh man, that's funny. Well, good stuff. Yeah, I think a lot of us, you wonder what it would be like to just kind of have your job be to be out in the wilderness all day, every day, and I've got to imagine there's some wild experiences. Let's talk about Spruce Pine, though. It's a really unique place, and I'd love to hear kind of before the hurricane came through. Tell me what Spruce Pine was like. What made it unique, and give me the overview.
Yeah, so we're in a really cool spot. We started marketing ourselves as the base camps of the Blue Ridge because we're only an hour away from Boone, North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina, and Johnson City, Tennessee, right on the edge of the Pisgah National Forest and the Linville Gorge Wilderness, which is one of the few wilderness areas that's in eastern North Carolina. It's a really remote sort of ancient forest, and it's old growth forest too because it was so hard to timber. So some of the trees in there are hundreds and hundreds of years old. So we have great access to nature and outdoor recreation. We're right down the road from Mount Mitchell, Roan Mountain, Grandfather Mountain, which are some great tourist attractions. So we're kind of right in the middle of all that. We're also a really abundant artist community. We have the Penland School of Craft 10 minutes from my house in downtown Spruce Pine. That has, brought world-class artists to this area. We have an abundance, and we're starting to kind of market on that. We've had the Fire on the Mountain Blacksmith Festival is entering its 20th year next year. And so we've had that, to promote our blacksmith heritage. We're a huge region for pottery and then also for glass and specifically glass blowing. We have Spruce Pine Batch here, which started as like a huge, high quality glass company. And we kind of built a community around that. And the reason for, the glass being so great here is that we have this quartz. It's this high purity quartz that exists here. And it's great for glass blowing, but it's also really important for sort of the world tech industry, where that high purity quartz is used to create a quartz crucible, which is then used to create silica for silicon chips. So any computer, phone, calculator, anything on the planet has a piece of spruce pine in it because we're, one of the only places that you can get that quartz. And it needs to be that high purity because you can't have the contaminants getting into the silicon for building those computer chips. So, we got a lot of attention during the hurricane because there was concern that, our county was completely cut off for about 5 days where no one could get in and out, no communication in and out. Either we were full blackout. And then with our railroads being destroyed and also, the road infrastructure, there was a lot of concern about essentially the world economy creeping to a halt because we weren't able to create chips anymore, and especially with how important that is now with, the CHIP Act being passed. And we have a new factory that's being built in Chatham County, North Carolina, as we speak. And so it's a huge industry and it's an important part of who we are.
Yeah. So, I mean, at first glance, Spruce Pine, small town in the middle of the North Carolina mountains, but
Yeah.
pretty darn important to the world economy.
Oh yeah, yeah, and we're thankful that we were getting some attention, even if it wasn't necessarily for us, but we were fortunate for it. But yeah, no, you wouldn't know it coming here, but we have a minerals museum and we talk about it and tell people why we're so cool.
Yeah. Well, in our preparation call, one of the things that you mentioned is that Spruce Pine, one of the things that makes it unique is it may even rival San Francisco for the volume of restaurants per capita. Tell me a little bit about the dining scene in Spruce Pine.
Hey, before the hurricane, we had some bumping restaurants in downtown. I would bring people up here to visit me. I've got friends, from college and just all over the state. And I bring them up here. We go to a restaurant, and they'd be like, "Wow, I didn't expect this in Spruce Pine." I was like, "Oh, did you think I was going to take you to like McDonald's?" And they're like, "I didn't think you were going to have McDonald's." And so it's really interesting being a tourism economy, with a town of 2,000 people to have, what we have. I don't have a set number of the restaurants we have, but we've got so many. I mean, I told you before about Bertie County where I lived. Windsor, the city there that I lived in, was about 1,000 people bigger than Spruce Pine, but they had 3 restaurants. So it's always kind of funny to hear people talk about, especially locals, talk about, oh, I wish we had more restaurants. I'm like, y'all have no idea how crazy it is that we have 2,000 people in this town and I could go out to a different restaurant every night for 3 weeks and not repeat.
That's amazing. I think it is pretty unique to have a town that small have that many restaurants. Do you believe that it's because of tourism, or is it because of the mining that's happening there? What caused you to have such a density of restaurants in Spruce Pine?
If I had to guess, it's probably just one of the main thoroughfares up and down the mountain is 226, and that goes right by Spruce
Mm,
Pine. So I think anyone who's coming from sort of the peripheral counties, if you're not going to Boone, you're not going to Asheville, and you're trying to go down the mountain to about I-40, you have to go down through that thoroughfare. And so I imagine just, it became sort of a central point. We've got the Walmart there as well. I think it became a central point for people as they travel to, Burnsville, North Carolina, or Newland, or one of these other sort of like communities around us. That was, just a good meeting spot for it.
great, great. Well, let's talk about the hurricane. I know that it was kind of a wild experience for you. I'd love to have you kind of just, none of us were there. We only experienced what we saw on the news, right? Which bits and pieces, and I think a lot of them were still trying to figure out what the story was while they were running bits and pieces of the story. So tell me a little bit about what that experience was like and what you guys went through when the hurricane hit.
Yeah, so we had already gotten about, I think it's 13, 17 inches of rain. I don't remember the exact number for the 48 hours leading up to the hurricane. So the ground was super saturated. Um, Hurricane hit, we had lost power the night before. So when we went to bed that night, we didn't have power. We woke up at 8 o'clock because we were hearing trees falling. I looked at my front yard, and the creek that usually just kind of flows by was in our front yard. Um, but it happened so fast that, 8 o'clock in the morning, is about when like it was reaching its peak. By that afternoon, all the water had mostly receded, and we were just kind of left with this mess. And we had 5 trees down in our neighborhood. We had one fall in the shed out back. And we'd also lost cellular service about that time as well, which was really scary. We thought it was just, whatever. We lived out here in this little, valley. I didn't really know what was going on. It wasn't until later that day that, I was like, oh, well, I want to go. We had a lot of trees fall here. We're not be able to drive the car out. Well, let's go walk around. Let's go for a walk, get some fresh air and check it out. To tell you how little we knew what was going on in those first 24 hours, I thought I was about to go downtown and get a beer and like go hang out and like talk to
Oh,
people how crazy that was. And I got to about the end of our neighborhood where the grocery store is, and I saw the whole wall of the grocery store was ripped off, and the parking lot was full of mud, and the police were in there kind of staging and getting stuff out of the grocery store to go help distribute it. And I thought I realized that something pretty serious had happened. So I went back into the neighborhood. So people were getting chainsaws together. Got the chainsaws together, cut ourselves out. My fiance and I left pretty shortly after that. We left the next morning to make sure we had enough time to drive. And just driving through everything, over the bridges was crazy because you would see huge trees just laying on the side of the road, and power was out everywhere. And you'd pass, one gas station, and there'd be a million people there because it's the only one that had power. And we went to my in-laws' house. What's usually about a 3.5 hour drive took us 8 hours that day because we had to go all the way down into South Carolina, wrap all the way back up around through Charlotte, North Carolina, and then up into Raleigh. Just because
wow.
I-40 had been wiped out and everything else. And it wasn't until we finally like got connected back that pictures started showing up, and we saw just the devastation that had happened everywhere else. Especially like the downtown scene, my office was under 8.5 feet of water. It's just unfathomable. I finally made it back up about a week later, and I went to go check everything out. Went downtown and just saw, there was 6 inches of mud in all of the buildings. You could see the flood line about 8.5 feet up to the awnings. And people just starting to work and try to figure it out. But it was absolutely insane just how much damage it did and how fast it did it. I was just downtown today, and, there's, all of our businesses on Lower Street still are open. They're hoping for, an April, May opening date. But, it's just so hard, with nobody had flood insurance. The river flooded 30 feet to get that 8.5 feet downtown. For a 30-foot flood, they don't even like offer flood insurance for that,
Yeah.
And so trying to navigate, the fundraising and everything for that and just how much it is, it's crazy finding out how much, just new flooring, glass, rewiring all the electrical in your building. Some business owners have had their buildings for, decades, and these upgrades they've made over decades. And now they have to just redo all of it in 6 months, trying to get reopened for the tourist season, which we're worried about the tourist season too, because the Blue Ridge Parkway put out a statement last week saying that our section was the most damaged, and they don't have an estimate date for when they're going to be reopened our part. So that's a little concerning because the exit for the parkway right in here in Spruce Pine, or right outside of Spruce Pine, it's all about 330,000 people exiting it a year. And so that's 330,000 people that might not be visiting us this year. And so those numbers
Wow.
are starting to get a little scary. And we still hadn't fully recovered from COVID. We were looking at Placer data today and saw that, we were creeping back in 23 and 24. But the 24 data, after the hurricane, which October when it hit is like our peak time. That's when people come for the leaves and
Yeah.
everything and really, visit us. We completely missed that. I'd started calling it the pay the bills month. Um, so we completely missed out on that. So, still recovering from COVID. So many businesses had to take out PPP loans. They're paying off those. We had some new businesses open that had a mortgage. And so just navigating the financials right now is kind of our biggest problem, because it is insane the amount of damage that was done here.
So what was that like when you kind of came back downtown and saw the 6 inches of mud in every building? I mean, did you have questions about the city's ability to bounce back?
Well, no, actually, that never quite entered my mind. I was a little worried about, kind of our private enterprises, about, who has the money to repair from this. But, the community rallied so fast that I was never worried about, whether or not we were coming back. It's just more of a question of how long it was going to be. Because everyone came together so quickly. I was talking to neighbors I never
Yeah.
talked to before, and we were, kind of relying on each other, sharing supplies, then going downtown. You'd be working on one building and someone's like, oh, we got something else going on out here. And then just everyone would go and work on the next one, just trying to get everything ready to go. They were just, cleaned up a little bit. So I was never worried about whether or not we're coming back. It's just more, how long is it going to be? Where are we going to find the money? And how do we get the word out when we're ready for people again, that we're ready for them? That please come visit
Yeah.
us. That's what we're kind of struggling with too, with a smaller county. Our county is only 15,000 people. So our TDA, which in North Carolina, is part of the county government, and the occupancy tax doesn't get that much money because we don't even have any hotels in Mitchell County where we are. So, talking about the marketing budget there, my organization is small. Our other organizations in the county are small. So how do we go through this? How do we go from national media saying that we were destroyed to being like, with our budgets, talking about, oh no, we're open, please come and combat, that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a challenge. I mean, and it's interesting because when there's a situation like this, the only way out in a lot of these cases is revenue. Even if people had reserves, those are reserves that get chewed up really fast when you're trying to rebuild. And so then you need your monthly cash flow to return to normal in some way, shape, or form. And so to have that message go out from the Blue Ridge Parkway that almost insinuates that you guys are not prepared to receive visitors, it's hard. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing from a messaging perspective to try to combat that and get some of these travelers to come in and give you the dollars and economic impact that you need to finish the recovery.
Yeah, so we're going to be having a meeting here soon, or we're going to talk to, the Blue Ridge Parkway and some other stakeholders about, what can we do to get the word out? If the Parkway is going to do a detour around this closed section, could we do a detour through downtown Spruce Pine, into these communities? We still get the, revenue or hopefully the visitation from the Parkway down in here. And kind of, talk with, our other, partners to try to figure that out. We've also been talking with Spruce Pine's a part of the North Carolina Main Street organization and the Main Street America as a whole. So we're fortunate to have them and their resources to kind of help us out to kind of, figure this out. And then Visit NC has also been helping us out a lot. They came and their executive director came and visited us and, hung out for an afternoon and talked with us about what we need and what we've got going on. And told us, when we're ready, we'll try to come up with a plan to do it together. So I think right now we're kind of relying on our partnerships, relying on, the generosity of others and help to kind of, when we're ready to get the word out. We've got two main streets in downtown Spruce Pine. Our lower street was the one that was flooded. Our upper street, of course, lost revenue because they didn't have power, water, any of that for a long time.
Yeah.
The water here, our wastewater treatment plant was completely destroyed. So we had to put up temporary, sewer solutions there to kind of get that going. So we were without water here for about 10 weeks before we got like clean, drinkable water and before you could like flush your toilet without thinking you were doing something wrong. And so, that had a huge damage, especially on our restaurants who need, to use so much water, hand washing, food preparation, everything.
Yeah.
And so that impact was certainly felt. But our upper street is open now, and we've got some of our lower street businesses. I moved up there to some spots, and so that spot is open. But we're still, struggling with, our parks are destroyed. Lower street, where a bulk of our businesses were still destroyed. So trying to build that back and also at the same time prepare for when we're open again and relying on those partners to get the word out.
Have you been able to document some of the rebuild through kind of capturing video and some of the storytelling of what it's going to mean for these families to be able to have their businesses open? Tell me a little bit about some of that work that you've done.
Yeah, yeah. So we've been, documenting this whole time. When I evacuated, I found out pretty quickly that I was one of the only like Spruce Pine organizations or, official Facebook pages that got out and was able to start posting updates about what was happening. And so we got a lot of people that way who started to rely on us as a information feed from, downtown. And so, we started taking a lot of pictures and recording a lot of video and kind of documenting that whole process. And we're working now on a video that was going to kind of be a donor ask video is kind of our angle that we think we're going to go for. Or we're going to, talk to our business owners, get some storytelling, put together a little video that we can post and have people see, hey, we're, 120 days after this incident, but look what's still happening here. Look, at what we're trying to do. We're going to be back. We just need a little bit of help.
What do you feel like you've learned about crisis communications in all this?
Oh, I've learned that communication is certainly key. I mean, those 5 days where nothing was going, it was all just, I found out the way that we evacuated because somebody told somebody that way was open. So communication is certainly key, and finding reliable, sustainable solutions to communication for our county and for this region is going to be imperative. If God forbid we have another disaster like this. Starlink was huge up here when people finally got power back. It was weeks after that we got internet. So being able to hook those up and start running was great. We had one at town hall so town could start providing updates. The county had it. We were able to get them at the fire stations to start, providing updates. So that people weren't, just hearing, someone said. You could actually get, reliable, good information. So definitely communication between those organizations is key. But it's interesting to find out how reliantly we're on it, and finding out those streams. So I think also it's going to be important for us to set up, when these mountain communities lose, power. Yeah, if we have to, power in at town hall, we're telling people outside what's going on. But we're still not communicating with people inside. So we found that, utilizing the radio station when they got power back on was really good. Getting information out. We had, an update every day at 1:00 where people could tune in. But I think also, learning to set up, sort of like disaster, information centers throughout the county is something we're talking about as well. Hey, the next time something like this happens, God forbid, y'all can come here, and this is where information is going to be. So instead of us having to, pass the word along through word of mouth, we could actually just have a system already set up, ready to go. And I think that's going to be
Got
huge,
it.
and it's something we certainly learned.
Great. And one of the things that you mentioned that you're working on is leveraging events to kind of help facilitate that recovery. Tell me a little bit about why you're using events and how you're planning on using events.
Yeah, so we already have a strong history of festivals up here. For a small town, we have a bunch of events. We're the home of the Blacksmith Festival, like I told you. We're also home to the Spruce Pine Alien Festival. And new this year, the one that I'm working on is the North Carolina Hellbender Festival. So it was things that we were working on before. We found that, events are a great way, if nothing else, to get the name out about your community. And also kind of draw people in to show off what you have and what you have to offer. So, a blacksmith festival shows people, our strong artisan culture, and also it's going to be our first big event. So kind of draw people in, show that, we're still here, we're recovering. We've got some stuff that we're working on. We've got plywood all across the lower street businesses. So we're working on a mural project for those to kind of, show that Spruce Pine is loved and cared for. Plan on auctioning those off afterwards as well to, for a little bit of more money as well. And then also,
Yeah.
just, using the festivals, show off who we are. The Hellbender Festival shows, that we are a huge environmental community and that, we are here in Appalachia, and to show off our culture, the music, talk about the Hellbender, which is a, indicator species for the cleanest water. We've got pre and post Helene, the water was dirty there for a while, but, some of the river keepers have been doing tests and the water is good now. And, showing off, what the, unique sort of like untouched, nature that we have here, and, showing how unique it is as a spot to, visit, and also, maybe to live.
Yeah. Well, man, I know that nobody can predict when some of this kind of stuff happens, right? There's no way to know that it's coming. But I guess what advice would you give others who want to be as prepared as possible for a disaster like this and who want to recover as quickly as
Yep.
possible? What takeaways can you give some of the listeners that want to be prepared as they approach something like this?
Yeah, as far as preparedness goes, I would say like redundancy is key. You have these systems that you think are never going to fail. But when they do, they do. Even when we lost power, it's, oh, we don't have internet, but we'll still have cell phone service. And no, we did. We didn't get cell phone service back for about a month. So, it took forever for that to get back on just to make a phone call. I was fortunate that I just upgraded to a new iPhone. So I was out here in the yard spinning in circles trying to get the satellite so I could send texts. And so just having those systems, having a radio in your home, I learned I needed to have a radio at home so I could get my updates. It just, focusing, on people, I think as well is really important. It was, the community that got us through this and is still getting us through this. I was just downtown today and I was, hanging out, getting ready for a meeting, and someone walked by and was like, "Hey, we just got drywall donated. Can y'all come help us unload this?" And so it was like the group of four of us that were hanging out all walked down there and, helped out with drywall unloading. So I think, community ties and community and collaboration, I think is what gets you through it, and relying on others and, reaching out and, to not think that you're weak for asking for help or that, something like that.
Yeah.
We've been combating a lot of that too with FEMA applications. People aren't filling out FEMA applications because they see their neighbor had, a tree go through their house, but you still had something happen. So filling that out, and also, being able to accept help, I think is some big lessons that we learned as I've learned as a person, and as we've learned as an organization.
Yeah. No, that's good advice. One of the things that I want to kind of expand on is, we try to build a communications vehicle like a Facebook group or something with all of our
Yeah.
locals and stakeholders. But if nobody has phone service, that doesn't matter, right? So what is our fail-safe communication system to our stakeholders if we were to go through a disaster like this? And I think that's something that every downtown and DMO should be asking and answering right now to make sure that, because communication, like you said, when something like this happens, if you can't communicate and don't have a fail-safe vehicle for communication, it's going to be really difficult to speed up that recovery and find out who needs help, right? And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it seems like that's a really important component to this.
Yeah. Well, we learned is those community gathering areas, like I was talking about, the fire station, community centers, just having those as kind of the established area for, oh, something's gone down, I can't talk to anybody. Where are people going to be at? Knowing where people are going to be at is, I think, the big one. And, making those areas, making sure those buildings have a generator, have, a satellite internet hookup, making those, your, fail safes that, when no one else can get information out, when the, power grid's down, when water's down, that people know like, oh, I can go to the community center and I'll be able to get information there. I'll have internet there. I can get, a blanket or whatever I need. And that will be your kind of central point for communication. Cause that is something that we had to battle, was the, the false information, the misinformation that kept coming out. So people would just hear it from wherever. So we've definitely learned to have those areas where like they're community gathering areas. And we're working on generators for those where, we have the Starlings donated. So thankfully we still have those, and just making sure all that's ready to go, in case you need to have this. And an emergency management team, I think, is really important. And knowing that there's someone who is an emergency management person that, is going to be handling all of it, I think is really important as well.
Great. Well, Spencer, I know this has been a challenging experience for you guys to go through in Spruce Pine, and that it's somewhat of a long road to recovery. And so, one of the things my listeners can do, obviously, is book a trip to Spruce Pine so that you guys can have the traffic you need to be able to recover. Is there any other way that people can help if they would like to, whether it's through monetary means or something else, or what's the best place for them to find out how they can help?
Yeah, two great places for us is our website is discoversprucepine.com, and then our Facebook is Downtown Spruce Pine. We've been doing fundraising through there for a grant program for our downtown businesses, doing relief and rebuilding grants. We were able to release about $164,000 a couple months ago to give out to our downtown businesses to help them, give a little bit of something to, help them get back on their feet, help pay for some of these repairs. We're fortunate that we've had a pretty successful fundraising again, so we're going to be hopefully announcing a second round of grants next week. And I got my board meeting tomorrow. We're going to be talking about it. And so we've fundraised about $90,000 more that we'll release again. And so, we've got our fundraising link on our website and on our Facebook. So if you want to help out monetarily, booking a trip is the best way to come down and see our downtown businesses and, spend some money here. Those are probably the two best avenues. And keeping up with us on Facebook is where we post most of our updates.
Great. Spencer, thanks for coming on, and good luck with all the recovery and challenges that you're going through. It sounds like you've got a great community there to weather it with, but really appreciate you taking some time to share your experiences with us here on the show.
Hey, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thanks everybody for listening. If you enjoyed the episode today, please don't forget to leave us a rating or review. It helps us to continue to bring you amazing guests like Spencer. Thanks everybody, and have a great week.